Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Cherry Pickers Podcast, the show for all things hockey, featuring your hosts, Zuu and Bee Rhodes.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are back for another episode of the Cherry Pickers Podcast featuring your hosts, Bee Rhodes and Zuu. Zuu, how are you doing today, my man?
Yo, I'm doing good. Give it up for the fella, Bee Rhodes, hitting us with the fat intro. Good job, Bee Rhodes. How are you doing, my man?
I'm doing really well, my man. We got a lot of topics to discuss for the week. It was another interesting week in the NHL. A lot of stuff going on, but we're just going to kick it right off. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right. So first off, we got to talk about Connor McDavid of the Edmonton Oilers. This man is absolutely popping off to start the season. As of right now, in 13 games played, he has 13 goals, 14 assists, 27 points. He's a +4. And Zuu, I got to ask you, is this the year that Connor McDavid finally gets the Rocket Richard Trophy?
Ooh, that's actually a good question. Obviously the Oilers, they have some scoring power on their top end. Draisaitl, McDavid, Vander Kane. We should talk about Evander Kane too, because some scary stuff happened today. But I don't know. It's really tough because obviously, McDavid's going to put up the points regardless. It doesn't matter who's around him or what's going on. He's going to put up the points. Obviously, he has a good shot and stuff like that, but he's not known as much for his shot as his, hockey IQ and his playmaking abilities. Honestly, I wouldn't put it past Connor McDavid to get the Rocket Richard Trophy this year. You're looking at his competition, in Austin Matthews, who's started out very slow in the goal scoring component this year. And Ovechkin, is always up there, so you have to see what Ovechkin's doing. And then, of course, his teammate Draisaitl as well. I don't know. I really do feel like this is a complete different year for McDavid. Obviously, he's showing his dominance early as he's averaging already 2 points per game. We're 13 games into the season. He's averaging 82 goals on pace for. And I think this is definitely a hungrier and just like the dynamic of how he's playing out there. He just wants it so much more this year. And I honestly wouldn't put it past him to get the Richard. I don't know. What do you think, B Rhodes?
I think he definitely could win it this year. I'm going to reference Sidney Crosby in this scenario. When he first came into the league, he was a pass-first kind of guy, and then there was one year where he just decided he was going to score a lot of goals and use his shot more, and I believe he got 51 goals in the 09-10 season to win it, and that was like his 5th season in the league. So McDavid is in his 7th season, I believe, 7th or 8th now.
Yeah, he just hit 500 games, didn't he?
Yeah, he just hit 500 games, and he got 720 points, I think,
That's
in
nuts.
those time. So, yeah, and in his first season, he had 16 goals, 32 assists, 48 points. Then he had 30 goals, 70 assists, 100 points, 41 goals, 67 assists, and 41 goals, 75 assists. Then 34 goals, 63 assists. And then last season in the North Division, he had 33 goals, 72 assists. Like, he's always been a pass-first kind of guy, but this year he's starting to utilize his shot more. He's being more selfish with the puck. And it's funny, actually, because Elliot Friedman was doing an interview with Leon Draisaitl on 32 Thoughts before the season started. He was talking about Draisaitl's ankle injury in the playoffs and just what he thought about him and McDavid's game, and he even told McDavid in the offseason, like, you can score 60 goals this year if you just shoot the puck more, because he's always had a lot of grade A scoring chances as well, but he just likes to make that nice play and be that pass-first kind of guy. So for me personally, I think if he does utilize his shot more, I see no reason why he couldn't keep up his scoring pace and win the Rocket this year.
I think, too, the thing about McDavid as well is that just, it gives a good example of how good his leadership is. Like, no matter how dominant McDavid is on the ice with the puck and without the puck, he's always looking to set up his teammates, and he's always looking to get his teammates involved. And you are right. If he was a little more selfish, which he has been showing this year, he definitely could be putting more pucks in the back of the net. But I think that just goes to show his leadership, as he wants everyone on the team to succeed, not just himself. And that's pretty evident, especially in last year's playoffs and to start this season off as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's a world-class talent, and I see no reason why he couldn't have a Rocket Richard if he wanted. He's just that good of a player.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to move on to another topic now. We just mentioned it earlier. That is Evander Kane. I actually didn't watch the game today. I'm going to be honest. I had a nap. I was tired from work. And I woke up. I was like, you know what? The boys have lost 3 in a row. They're winning. I'm not going to turn it on and jinx it. So I did not see what happened, but I heard that he got his wrist cut by a skate. I believe it was Patrick Maroon.
Yeah, it was a very interesting situation. I watched the highlight. Sabres fans, Florida fans, Clint Malarchuk, Richard Zednik, if you remember that situation, you might not want to watch this situation. It was pretty gruesome. Not as bad, obviously, those two players got skates to the throat. Still very serious, obviously, in Evander Kane's situation, but he takes a hit, falls to the ice, and as he falls to the ice, the puck is sitting there loose right near him. There's kind of a pile up, and Patrick Maroon's, skating over to get that loose puck, and just so happens that he turns his foot, and the blade comes right across Evander Kane's wrist, and it's very gruesome. I do not recommend watching it if you're squeamish. But Evander Kane was he immediately got up, skated immediately to the bench. They got him to hospital. He's undergoing surgery. Seems to he should be making a full recovery. Who knows how long that's going to take? From the sounds of it, it sounds like it could be tendons and stuff that were cut. So it's it's pretty gruesome. It wasn't very good looking, but it's just a freak situation. It's surprising how little this happens in the NHL due to the fact that these players are skating at 30 kilometers an hour on literal razor blades. Like, it's crazy that stuff doesn't happen more often. But very scary injury, and obviously we hope for a speedy recovery for Evander Kane, and we're glad that nothing too detrimental came out of it.
Yeah, no kidding. I actually, now that you bring that up, I do remember watching that game when Zednik got his throat cut, and he literally would have died on the ice if the Florida Panthers trainer at the time did not have military experience, because he literally was bleeding so badly. Like, he would have died within a few minutes if that trainer wasn't. So it's very scary when things like that happen. You get cut from a skate, and hopefully it's not too serious and he does recover soon, because he is a big part of the Oilers' top 6 right now. He's a point per game player, plays in all situations. He's a big power forward, creates space on the ice for them, plays on the power play as well. So he's a big part of that team, and hopefully he's back in the lineup as soon as possible. So we're going to move on to another topic on the Oilers, and that is a goalie controversy. As of right now, Jack Campbell, he's gotten off to a bit of a slow start to the year. At the time of this recording, he is 5 wins, 3 losses, so he's still winning games. However, he currently has a goals against average of 4.20, save percentage is .874. He hasn't really been getting it done to what he's capable of. On the other hand, Stuart Skinner has started 5 games. He's 2-3. His goals against is 2.62, and he has a .928 save percentage at the time of this recording. It's safe to say he has been doing better than Jack Campbell has been so far. Zuu, what are your thoughts on Campbell and his struggles out of the gate?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and I could definitely relate to it. As a Flames fan, watching Jacob Markstrom start this year as well. Jacob Markstrom, he was a Vezina Finals last year, and he's got off to a rough start. And that's the goalie, in the Oilers situation. You look to that guy, you just signed him to a big deal. He's making over $5 million per season. You expect him to come out and perform. And unfortunately, under this circumstance, Jack Campbell just hasn't been getting it done. It's good for the Oilers because they've had such issues with goaltending in the past. All throughout the last, let's say, 4 years, 5 years, everyone's been talking about Oilers goaltending. They need better goaltending, and there's just never been goalies available on the market. And now that they've actually drafted a goalie in Stuart Skinner and raised him up through their system, and now that he's actually playing backup to Campbell and getting these reps and getting these starts, and he's looking very solid, it's nice to have that opportunity now for the Oilers. Because if you look in the Oilers case, say Mike Smith, one of the most streakiest goalies in NHL history, has those off nights. Do you feel confident throwing Mikko Koskinen in the net behind him, right? That was the Oilers' kind of ongoing, struggle in the past couple of years. And now that they have a goalie that can come in and holdout games when Jack Campbell isn't on, it's good. But yeah, you are right. Jack Campbell definitely does need to step it up. Obviously, it's tough where he's in a brand new team, brand new market, even different climate. Man, it's cold out there in Alberta. You know what I'm saying? It's cold. It's a tough start for Jack Campbell, but he's a good goalie. He's a very good goalie. I'm sure he'll bounce back. It's just hasn't been the start that him or the Oilers want, and I'm sure he'll come back from it.
I think it's also a byproduct of the defense in front of him as well. I mean, they haven't been playing to their capability while Jack Campbell's been in net at the same time. But I will say this, when Stuart Skinner came in relief of Jack Campbell in the first Battle of Alberta game, I thought he played fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
He came in, he really settled it down for the team, and they had a chance to come back in that game, and they lost 4-3, I believe.
Yeah.
So he's been playing well, and when he played in Calgary as well, Stuart Skinner actually stole that game for the Oilers. Calgary should have won, but Skinner played fantastic. So it's good to know that the Oilers have another goalie that, if their number one isn't firing on all cylinders like he hasn't been out of the gate, that Skinner can come in and play well, and the boys can play well in front of him and not have to worry about, we have our backup in, and he's not ready. Skinner has proven that he's capable at the NHL level, especially last year when he came up for a few games. He pitched a shutout actually against the Sharks and won his first starts in the league. So he's been playing well. He's proven that he can play at the NHL level, but hopefully Campbell can turn it around because he is a good goalie, and I'm confident he's going to come back. He's got a good heart. He's a great teammate for the guys. He's been staying positive through this whole ordeal, so hopefully he can get his game back and the Oilers can string together some wins.
That's the thing too about the Oilers is I know you're a fan of this thought process, and this is kind of how I look at goaltending too. I don't really like the idea of having, unless you have, an out-of-the-world starter like Vasilevsky or Shesterkin, I don't really like believing in a number one starter goalie. I am personally a fan of just riding the hot hand. If Jack Campbell's going to start out cold and he's going to start out slow for the Oilers, just ride Stuart Skinner. And as soon as Stuart Skinner starts to fall off a little bit, then go right back to Campbell. And then let Campbell, earn and prove that spot to start games. Because if you got a younger goalie that is, putting up way better numbers than you, getting the results that you should be getting, that should just fuel your drive to play better for your team and for yourself. So I think that the Oilers, are in honestly a decent position where, they have this goalie that they're paying a lot and he's not performing, but at least they're not out of a goalie, don't have any goalie issues right now. At least they have a goalie that is still solid in between the pipes for them. So I think they should just ride the hot hand and just wait for Jack Campbell to get his chance to bounce back early.
I totally agree with riding the hot hand. And just to add to your point there too, when you're riding your hot goalie, I feel especially at the beginning of the season when the points are so much more valuable, you definitely want to ride the hot hand for your goalie, because generally in the NHL around American Thanksgiving, the teams that are in the playoffs at that point more than likely are the teams that are going to be in the postseason. So those points at the start of the season are so crucial, and you want to be playing your goalie that's playing really well to give you the best chance to win every night. And I do agree with not having a legitimate standout number one goalie, unless, like you said, it's Vasilevsky or Shesterkin. I think if you have two capable goalies like the Oilers do, that you can play 50 to 30 starts a year, your goalies aren't going to be worn out come playoff time. I found that was a big thing the last time the Oilers went on a good run in the playoffs, 2017. Do you know how many games Cam Talbot started that year in the regular season?
I don't know, actually.
He started 73 of 82 games.
Gosh.
He played 73 games, and then he played the entire playoffs. So he was playing a lot of minutes, and you could just tell by the time, the end of the second round, he was tired. So it's good that the Oilers don't have to play a goalie for 73-plus games again, because it does actually have an impact on your team's success throughout the year. So
it's funny you say that too about Cam Talbot, because that's exactly the situation that Jacob Markstrom was in last year. Markstrom almost played 70 games and then he played all throughout the playoffs, and you could tell in that series against the Oilers there, Markstrom was just burnt out, and he didn't have his complete 100% style of game. So the Flames are it's eerily similar how the Flames and Oilers goaltending situation is right now. When you look at the two goalies for the starters, the quote-unquote starters for both teams, you got Markstrom and Campbell, both making a lot of money, both struggling to start the season. And then they both have young backups, Dan Vladar and Stuart Skinner, and they're both playing pretty good. So, I mean, it's a good situation for both teams, to have, like I said, to have a decent backup goalie that's ready to play some games. But, it's kind of eerily similar how close those teams are.
Speaking of controversies, we're going to start talking about the coaches now. There's a few coaches on some teams who I think should be doing better than what they are. Their teams are off to some rough starts. That is the St. Louis Blues, the Pittsburgh Penguins, Vancouver Canucks, and the Columbus Blue Jackets. So I'm going to ask you this, Zuu. Out of these four teams, the coaches being Craig Berube for the Blues, Mike Sullivan for the Penguins, Bruce Boudreau for the Canucks, or Brad Larson from the Blue Jackets, all off to rough starts, which coach do you think is in danger of being let go first?
Ooh, that's a tough question, actually. I'm gonna. Okay. I think I know my answer. I don't think it's Brad Larson with the Blue Jackets. Obviously the Blue Jackets haven't started out where they want to be, but no one really expects them to be even a playoff contender. Obviously, they're at the bottom of the Metro right now. They were last in the league last time I checked. They're something like 3-9 or something like that. But the Blue Jackets, they just don't have it. They don't have the team yet. They're still working on it. I don't think Brad Larson. This is, I think, his second year as head coach of the Blue Jackets. And obviously the team hasn't been built around him. So I don't think Brad Larson's in too much danger, really. Then looking at Vancouver. Vancouver's a tough one, and we've been talking about it earlier. Of course, Vancouver, started the season with multiple 2-goal leads blown to lose the games. They started something like 0-5 or 0-6 or something like that. I don't think Boudreau's really in danger either. They brought in Bruce last year, and when they brought him in, they went on an absolute run, and they were just shy of making the playoffs after it looked like their season was kind of hopeless. I think for the Canucks situation, I don't think it's really Bruce's issue. I think it's more of the lack of chemistry with the players. I think the players aren't gelling as much. It was a rough start to the season, obviously, and Thatcher Demko hasn't playing up to standards. A lot of players, JT Miller hasn't been playing very good defensively. A lot of the leadership in the locker room is kind of all over the place. So I don't know. I don't think it's really Bruce's problem that the Canucks aren't doing as good. I don't think Bruce is really in danger either. So that leaves us with St. Louis and Pittsburgh. This is a tough one. Mike Sullivan, coach of the Penguins. He's been the coach of the Penguins for a while now. Didn't he take? I think he took over Dan Bilesma. I can't remember. But he's been a coach for a minute for Pittsburgh. That core is still there. Crosby, Letang, Malkin, Gensel. That core is still there. I don't know. I don't think Mike Sullivan. Mike Sullivan knows how to get the best out of these players, and it's just a rough patch for Pittsburgh. I think if I'm gonna give you an answer on who I think should be most worried about their job, is honestly Craig Berube of the Blues. I think the Blues, they've gotten off to a rocky start. I think they've lost 8 straight games now. Their 2 signees that they signed to long-term deals, Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou in the offseason, have not been producing at all. The Blues have a fantastic lineup. They're kind of lacking in the goaltending department. Not the best goalies with Binnington and Greiss, but their defensive, stacked defensive core should make up for that, and their offense isn't putting the puck in the net. And I think it's up to Craig Berube to get the best out of those players, and he hasn't been doing it. And I think, honestly, Craig Berube is probably the one that's most in danger. But what about you, Bee Rhodes? I want to hear your opinion on this one.
Yeah, so like you were saying, for me personally, I don't think Columbus's coach is really in danger because, to be honest, I don't think we were expecting Columbus to be in the hunt for a playoff spot this year anyway. So for me, I don't think Brad Larson's job is really in danger. Moving on to Vancouver. They started off 0-5-2, and they're actually 4-6-3 now, so they have been playing better hockey as of late. So, like you're saying, I don't think Bruce Boudreau is really in danger either, because when he came in last year, like you said, they made a real push for the playoffs when it looked like they were out of it. They finished 3 or 4 points out. They were 40, 30, and 12 at the end of the year, so they're actually right in there. Pittsburgh, Mike Sullivan has been around for a long time. He actually took over from Mike Johnson, I think is what the coach's name was, in the 15-16 season, actually, is when he came in after he got fired, and then the Penguins went on to win 2 straight Stanley Cups. So Mike Sullivan is a very accomplished coach in his own right as well. Pittsburgh has made the playoffs 16 years in a row, I believe. So the thing with the Penguins, they're 4-6-2. They're only a couple games below 500. They're not by any means out of the playoffs. If they can string together a few wins, which they're easily capable of, they could be right back in it. So for me, it's not Mike Sullivan as well. I'm going to agree with you. I think it's the St. Louis Blues. This is a team that is expected to be in the top 3 in the Central Division every season. Last year, they pushed Colorado to Game 6 in Round 2, so they have a history of being a very strong team. They're clearly not playing that well right now. 3-8-0, a -20 goal differential right now. They're just not getting it done. And I would agree with you. I think their goaltending situation is lacking. I think at this point I would prefer to still have Ville Husso on the roster compared to Jordan Binnington. That's just my opinion. But overall, I think Craig Berube's in the most danger because he won a Stanley Cup in 2019. He's expected to get this team in the playoffs every year, especially with the roster they have right now with the likes of Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou, like you said. So for me, I think part of St. Louis's problem is just they have too many Craigs. They also have Craig McTavish as a part of their coaching staff as well. So I think that's it. I think they got to get rid of one of the Craigs. It's just not working. So I think
battle of the Craigs. You should put them on a island and do some Hunger Games style. It'll be what do you call it, like Craig Games or something like that. The last one standing remains the coach of the Blues.
See who does better on the Jenny Craig diet.
Yeah, I think it's Craig Berube. Yeah, it's clear that something's going on in St. Louis. They have a fantastic roster, and it's not getting done. And usually that's a result of poor coaching. You know, it's like you said, they got to a cup in 2019, and their roster hasn't changed too much since then. They still have a very solid team, and it's not getting done. So we're going to watch out for that. Watch out for the Blues. See if anything changes there roster-wise, coaching staff-wise. But, yeah, the Blues are definitely in some trouble right now.
Speaking of teams that are in trouble right now, I want to talk about the Ottawa Senators.
I was going to say, if you said the Calgary Flames, I would have been a little upset with you.
No, that is the Ottawa Senators. And we're not talking about in trouble as in their record. We're talking about in trouble as in they are up for sale, and I heard that Ryan Reynolds is interested in purchasing the team. What are your thoughts on Ryan Reynolds looking to buy the team?
Dude, I love it. I honestly love it. I think it's cool. You know, Ryan Reynolds is such a Canadian boy. He was on Jimmy Kimmel, I think it was last night or the night before, and, you know, he was talking about the potential of buying it, you know, as comedic as possible. But that's the thing. He said he grew up in Vancouver, and he also grew up in Ottawa as well, and you know, he loves the sport. He was actually at the Ottawa Senators game tonight against the Vancouver Canucks, which was kind of cool. The crowd gave him a little standing O, but I think it'd be cool, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's kind of like, you look at like the Toronto Raptors. Obviously, they're not owned by Drake, but Drake is like a big part of that franchise, and he kind of, you know, he kind of promotes them a little bit. And it's cool to see, you know, popular celebrities getting into sports, but you don't see it a lot in hockey, you know. As for popular celebrities, you know, like Snoop Dogg's come on the LA Kings broadcast a couple times, which is really cool. And it's always cool to see these popular celebrities come on, but to have one to potentially own a franchise, I think would be really cool. I'm all for it, honestly. I'd love to see it happen. What do you think, Bee Rhodes?
Yeah, I agree. I think it would be really cool if Ryan Reynolds owned the Senators. And I actually saw a clip. I can't remember if it was on TikTok or what it was on, but he was on the Jimmy Fallon show, and Jimmy Fallon actually asked him about it, and he said he would need to have support to buy the team, though. He would have to have like shared ownership or something like that.
He needs a sugar mama.
Yeah, he was saying a sugar mama, but in terms of buying the team. So yeah, I think it would be cool if Ryan Reynolds owned the team, and yeah, Ottawa Senators need a new owner after Eugene Melnick's passing, so hopefully Ryan Reynolds can. I think it would be cool to see, personally.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to ask you this as well now, too. We're going to talk about the Buffalo Sabres. This is a team that has been actually doing pretty well to start the season. They've got some good players, Rasmus Dahlin, Owen Power, Dylan Cousins, Tage Thompson, Alex Tuck. They seem to be on the uprise, and they're off to a 7-5-0 start at the time of this recording. I got to ask you, are the Buffalo Sabres the real deal this year and finally get in the playoffs, or are they just off to a hot start?
Okay. This is a tough one. I really like Buffalo. I like what they're doing. Their prospects, they've drafted good the last few years. Obviously, guys like Owen Power, Rasmus Dahlin, Tage Thompson jumping up into the lineup and being big key pieces for this roster. I'm gonna say if they had any other goalie in the net, I think they could actually be a playoff contender. I don't think Craig Anderson and Eric Comrie is going to get Buffalo to the promised land. I just don't think it's going to happen. If Eric Comrie, by all means, if Eric Comrie has a breakout season, proves that he is a legitimate goalie in the NHL. He's never had that chance because he's been stuck behind Connor Hellebuyck for years. We all know Connor Hellebuyck. He's top 3, top 5 goalie in the NHL. When you're stuck behind a goalie like that, like, for example, Alex Georgiev, you look at him, he was stuck behind Shesterkin. You're not going to steal starts from Igor Shesterkin. Same thing with Hellebuyck. You're not stealing starts from Connor Hellebuyck. So with Eric Comrie going to Buffalo now, playing alongside Craig Anderson, I think this is a really good chance for Eric Comrie to prove that he's a legitimate goalie. And if he does that, by all means, I think Buffalo definitely can push for the playoffs and probably get in. This Atlantic division is so tough, obviously, with teams like Florida, Tampa, Boston, Detroit's trying to make a push. Like, it's a tough division. And Buffalo, they're doing pretty good. They're only 2 games above 500, but if you ever watch Buffalo hockey, like, they played the Flames recently, and they played the Oilers as well. And it's exciting hockey. They play fast-paced. They play very good, take lots of shots. They're a good team. I just think if they had the goaltending, the established goaltending, then absolutely they can make the playoffs. But I think it all really depends on how Anderson and Comrie do as a tandem.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I mean, we don't know much about Eric Comrie because he was behind Connor Hellebuyck, like you said. But I think this is a good fit for him in Buffalo. I think he's finally getting the chance to play games and show what he's capable of. And with your point of being behind a star goalie, I'm actually going to bring up a goalie who I just thought of while you were talking about that, and that is Cam Talbot. When he was with the New York Rangers, he was behind Henrik Lundqvist for a number of years, and obviously you're not stealing starts from the king himself. It's just not going to happen. But when he got traded from the Rangers to the Oilers, he actually was given a chance to be a number 1 goalie, and he flourished as the number 1. Like, he showed what he was capable of, and now he's a great goalie in the league. And I think Eric Comrie has that ability as well to show what he's capable of. I mean, I think Craig Anderson is going to be a great mentor for him because he's been around for so long, and he was a absolute stud when he played for the Ottawa Senators too. He was a big part of that 2017 team that almost made the Stanley Cup final. And I think there's a lot of good pieces in Buffalo as well. Like, I think Rasmus Dahlin is having a great start to his season. He scored in like the first 5 games of the season for him. He's a fantastic defenseman. I think Owen Power's got a fantastic ceiling as well. And players like Dylan Cousins, he's a good forward. I think he's going to be a great player for Buffalo. And shout out to Alex Tuck as well. He's killing it for my fantasy team so far. He's been solid as well. And Tage Thompson is a great player. So I think Buffalo's got the pieces, and they're going to turn it around soon. I think they're on the upswing. For me, it's really just going to depend on the goaltending, like you said. But their division is also tough as well, with teams like Boston, Tampa, Toronto. Detroit's getting better as well. So I think it's going to be competitive for sure. I think at the end of the year, if their goaltending holds true, I think they're going to be right in there for a wild card spot at the end of the year, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. So we're moving on to, since we were talking about teams that we think are the real deal, we got some more teams to talk about. Contenders or pretenders. So these are teams currently in the playoff picture that weren't in last season. We just talked about one of them, so we're going to skip over them. But the other teams we've got are Seattle, Winnipeg, New Jersey, Philly, the New York Islanders. Out of those teams, which of those teams that's off to a hot start do you think are going to be a real chance for pushing for the playoffs this year? And which of those teams do you think is going to fall back to earth and just be where they're usually at?
All right, you're gonna have to give me this list again because I couldn't, I didn't get all of the teams in my memory bank there. Anyways, let's talk about the teams I think are gonna be pretenders for sure. Number one, Seattle, 100%, no doubt about it. I do like Seattle's offensive core. I like the additions of Burakovsky this year. Matty Beniers has taken a huge step in his game. He is looking absolutely solid. They're getting James Schwartz back. He only played something like 40 games. However, goaltending is huge issue for Seattle. It's not there, you know. Joey Decord right now is their starter since they've got injuries, and even without the injuries, Chris Drieger's not going to take you to the promised land. Grubauer has not been playing good either. So I think Seattle definitely is a pretender. You know, like, for example, the Calgary Flames are out of a playoff spot in the Pacific. I don't think Seattle finishes with more points than Calgary. You also got teams like Vegas. You got teams like LA. You got Edmonton, Vancouver. Like, there's too many teams that are ready for the playoffs over Seattle. Seattle, 100% a pretender in my opinion. Another pretender I honestly think is the New York Islanders. I don't like the New York Islanders style of play. I just, like, when they played under Barry Trotz, it was boring hockey, in my opinion. It reminds me of, like, Dallas Stars hockey. Now under Lane Lambert, you know, I gotta give a little bit of credit to Lane Lambert because he's the uncle, I believe, of my favorite prospect, Brad Lambert. I love Brad Lambert. But Lane Lambert, you know, this is his first year as a head coach. He's intern head coach of the Islanders right now, and you know, he's got to prove something to the Islanders organization to remain the head coach. And I just don't think the Islanders are a playoff team. Like, they obviously are very good defensively. They have a fantastic defense core. They got Ilya Sorokin in between the pipes. Fantastic. In the offensive zone, though, it is so lackluster. You have Matty Barzal. You have Josh Bailey. I mean, Anders Lee can put up 15 goals for you, but other than that, what else do you got? Like, the Islanders are lacking so much offensive firepower. They don't have enough to outscore opponents. They don't have quite the defensive skill to hold their opponents to 0, 1, maybe 2 goals a game and then outscore them. That's the only problem with the Islanders, I find. And so I've never really liked the Islanders roster. I don't think they're a team ready for the playoffs, and I think they're definitely a pretender as well. Give me this list again, B Rhodes. What other teams you got on there?
So the other teams I got on the list are Winnipeg, Buffalo, who we just talked about, New Jersey, and the Philadelphia Flyers.
And Philly, perfect. All right, I'm gonna give you one more pretender on this list, and then the other three I think honestly have a shot. So we talked about Buffalo. I think Buffalo has a shot for sure. I don't think they're pretenders. I think they're actually, you know, they've gelled so well. Their chemistry is so good. So I actually think they could be in the hunt. The last pretender I think honestly out of this list, it's going to come as a little bit of a surprise, but I think it's honestly Winnipeg. Now, Winnipeg obviously is a loaded team. They have great players. They're backed up by Hellebuck in between the pipes. You got players like Mark Scheifele, Kyle Connor, Nikolai Ehlers, Blake Wheeler, Cole Perfetti. Like, their offense goes on. Their defense is nothing to pass over either with Josh Morrissey and Pionk and Nate Schmidt. Like, they have a good team, very good team. The only thing that's wrong with Winnipeg, and this has been evident obviously since the offseason, is that the leadership and the chemistry in the locker room, it's not there. And that is such a key thing in today's, NHL. Like, you have to be such a well-knit team. If you're not well-knit off the ice and on the ice, you're not going to perform. And with Blake Wheeler stepping down from his captaincy for the Jets, Mark Scheifele, honestly, I still think he's kind of a locker room cancer. Like, I don't know. I don't like Mark Scheifele. I think he has a cocky attitude. There's just, like, so much evident from last year that Winnipeg did not have the chemistry and the leadership, and I still think it's carrying over this year, and I really don't think Winnipeg is going to be able to click and perform. Like, they can get, on hot streaks, but I don't think they're going to stay consistent. Now, talking about Philadelphia, the reason why I think Philadelphia is not a pretender, I think they actually can make a hunt for the playoffs. Philadelphia is run by John Tortorella. That's it. That's it right there. John Tortorella, is one of the, if not the toughest coach to play for. But he gets results, and that's why he's still a coach in the NHL. He gets results out of the players. You look at the roster last year for the Philadelphia Flyers and then compared to this year. The only difference is Tony DeAngelo on the blue line. You still have Sean Couturier injured. You don't have Claude Giroux anymore. But this team's putting up extremely better numbers than they did last year. Philadelphia, honestly, is absolutely buying into John Tortorella's system. And he's a coach that is built, made to go to the playoffs. And I think Philadelphia, honestly, can make a run for it. And then the last team, New Jersey, I'm going to talk about New Jersey real quick. Jesper Bratt's an absolute menace. I love Jesper Bratt. He's so sick. New Jersey plays so high octane. They need Blackwood not to be injured. Vanecek's a nice pickup. He's been solid for them. They need Blackwood to be healthy, though. I still think New Jersey's sick. I think they've made definite improvements this year, and I think New Jersey can make the playoffs as well. All right, sorry for the rambling, but that's what I think about those teams.
I mean, those are very fair opinions as well. I'm just going to give my opinion.
Absolutely.
I 100% agree with you with Seattle. I think they're complete pretenders. Matty Beniers has definitely been a nice surprise for that team. However, I just really don't see them being a playoff team. I don't think they're deep enough. I don't think their goaltending is good enough. Their defense or their offense, really, I see them falling back to earth. Do I think they're going to be bottom of the league? No. But I don't think they're going to be a playoff team either. I just think the division's too strong. Vegas is off to a super hot start. I think both Calgary and Edmonton are going to get into the playoffs as well. And I think even LA could push for a spot as well. I think they're a good enough team to get in. So for me, I see Seattle falling back in the division, and I don't see them maintaining their success so far. As for the Winnipeg Jets, though, I actually think they are for real. And the reason I say that is because right now they are 7-3-1. And as you were describing earlier, they have a very good goalie in Connor Hellebuck. They have a solid defense with Josh Morrissey, Neil Pionk, Nate Schmidt, Logan Stanley. And their offense with Blake Wheeler, Mark Scheifele, Pierre-Luc Dubois, Kyle Connor. I think they have a good forward core as well. And yes, the locker room is definitely an important thing as well. But they also, with the new coach, Rick Bowness, he's also preached to just be more relaxed and just don't take it too seriously and just to really gel with each other is what he's been preaching. It's a fresh voice for that team. And the reason that they also stripped Blake Wheeler of his captaincy was for that reason, so they wouldn't just have one standout leader in that room and everybody's buying into that leadership and taking on a new role. So for that reason, I think it's actually going to help their on-ice performance. So for me, I actually have Winnipeg being a legitimate threat this year and making the playoffs. We did talk about Buffalo, so I'm going to skip over them. The New Jersey Devils, I agree with you 100%. I think the Devils are a very high-octane team. Right now, they're playing with so much speed and skill. They're just looking like they're just taking teams down with how skilled they are. Jack Hughes is a phenomenal player. Nico Hischier off to a great start as well. Jesper Bratt is phenomenal. He's put up 70 points, I think, last year. And right now he's among the league leaders in points. So he's been absolutely buzzing right now. And they've got some good prospects coming up as well, like Simone Nemec, I believe is his name. Luke Hughes.
Yep.
Mackenzie Blackwood's a good goalie. If he can stay healthy or get back healthy, that's a huge help for them. And Vanecek's been real solid as well. Another shout out to my fantasy team, buzzing. Yeah, I think the Devils are a team that can for sure get in with teams like Pittsburgh not being off to a hot start. Washington, I think, is on the decline with their aging core now. So I think there's room for the Devils to get in. So for me, I think they're going to make it. Philly, I don't know. With the Flyers, it's an interesting one because, yeah, John Tortorella is getting the players to buy in, and that's the thing with his style of coaching. If you don't perform, you're on the bench. You're not playing. He's a hard-ass kind of coach, and he gets results out of mediocre teams. He's very good at it. He did it with the Columbus Blue Jackets the year they swept Tampa. Nobody really expected them to be as good as they were. And he's just got that ability short term to get the best results out of mediocre teams. But I don't know. I just don't think Philly's quite got it to make it. I think it's going to be close. They're going to push for wild card, but I think they're going to come down to earth. I think they're going to fall off, so I don't have them in. I think the New York Islanders actually have a better shot, in my opinion, than Philly does. The reason I say that, I think their defense is stronger than the Philadelphia Flyers is, and there's a few pieces on their team. Like, they do have some players. Barzell, Zach Parise, Kyle Palmieri, Brock Nelson, Anders Lee. Like, sure, these guys aren't going to put up, 30-goal seasons, but I think between all of them, if they're capable of getting between 15 and 20, I could see Anthony Beauvillier getting around there. Jean-Gabriel Pageau, I could see getting around 15. Nelson as well, pushing 20. I think if they can keep the puck out of the net, which I believe they are capable of with Sorokin and Natty's been playing really well, and they have a great defense core. They have Ryan Pulak, Noah Dobson, Adam Pelech, Scott Mayfield. There's good defensemen on that team. I think they have the ability to get in. So for me, I think the Islanders are in between a contender and a pretender. I don't think they're better than New Jersey or Winnipeg, say, but I think they have a better shot than Philly. So that's just my take on it anyway.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in, honestly. The NHL is such a it's a weird sport because you never know what can happen, and there's so many surprises throughout the year that you just weren't expecting. But you can judge as much. We can both sit here and judge as much as we want on paper, but it all depends on how the teams perform on the ice, and for that, we're not gonna know. So it's only predictions, but yeah, we're gonna have to keep tabs on those teams, especially. I'm gonna be watching a lot more New Jersey games. I think I just finished watching the Flames and New Jersey game tonight, and man, New Jersey is a sick team, dude. They play fast, they shoot the puck, they're so creative, so skillful. I tell you, that trio of Brad Heischer and Jack Hughes is terrifying, so sick. It's a good team. I really like watching them. So yeah.
Lindy Ruff looks like an absolute boss behind the bench with his tinted glasses
stud.
going on right now. Man, don't mess with Lindy Ruff. He means business this year.
Stud. Lindy Ruff is an absolute beauty. It's so funny to think too because what was it, 2 games into the season, Devils fans were chanting "Fire Lindy Ruff" and stuff like that, and it's come on, give the man a break. 2 games into the season, are you kidding me? And now the Devils are one of the top teams in the league with how they've been performing, and it's people are so quick to jump on the problem, but most of the times the problem they think it is not actually the problem, and it's it's funny to see things like that.
I'm gonna quote Jesse Pollock from Bar Down on this one. Are you kidding me?
Are you kidding me?
Absolute bozos. Lindy Ruff ain't going anywhere. Guy's been buzzing. Those tinted glasses getting the Jack Adams for sure. You heard it here first.
Dude, that poll that went out for the best looking coaches, Lindy Ruff's got to go up 5 spots just for the tinted glasses alone, honestly. Let's be real here.
Yeah, you'd be pushing Daryl Sutter. I mean, he's older, but
okay.
Absolute
Let's
class.
Not get too far here. Daryl Sutter is an absolute beauty. Come on now. Have you seen his body? Dude's the best in shape 65-year-old I've ever seen in my life. Daryl Sutter's an absolute beauty.
Jay Woodcroft did get number 1, though. I mean, that meme of him looking like he's about to get a Burger King order, absolute class.
Oh, man. You got anything else to talk about this week, Bee Rhodes, or what?
I do. I got a few more topics that happened during the week. Let's get right on into where we got to talk about another goalie, and that is Devan Dubnyk. It was announced that he retired after 12 NHL seasons. He played for the Edmonton Oilers, the Nashville Predators, Arizona Coyotes, Minnesota Wild, San Jose Sharks, and the Colorado Avalanche. And his best years were in Minnesota. I believe he did win a Vezina with the Wild, or he was right there.
I'm looking it up.
Yeah, he definitely had a good season in 14-15 when he went there. I don't know if he did win the Vezina, but he definitely was nominated for sure.
Oh my God, Google's taking forever. I think he might only won a Masterton, if I'm not mistaken. He probably was nominated. Like, I know exactly what season you're talking about. He was a monster that season, but I don't know if he won any more awards. But yeah, Devan Dubnyk retiring. That's crazy. We're getting old.
Yeah, I want to talk about Dubnyk because he actually has like a very interesting career. He was drafted, I believe, 13th overall in 2004 by the Oilers. He was around that there anyway, but when he played for the Oilers, he was supposed to be like their number one goalie. This was during the decade of darkness for the Oilers when they weren't good at all. They were relying on like a 21, 22-year-old goalie basically to just step in and take the reins right away. And he had some good seasons. He was just playing behind a very poor team with the Oilers. And during the 2013-14 season, he started off quite poorly. He ended up getting traded from the Oilers to the Nashville Predators. Do you know what the return was for Devan Dubnyk at the time?
You know, I don't know the return because honestly, I didn't even know he played for Nashville. I thought he went from Edmonton straight to Minnesota. And when you said Nashville, I was like, whoa, I didn't even know that. What was the return, though? I want to know.
Devan Dubnyk was traded 1-for-1 for Matt Hendricks. That was the trade. He was traded 1-for-1 for Matt Hendricks.
Holy.
So they traded him because his value just wasn't there at all at the time. He was having a rough season and wasn't worth that much. He played for Nashville. He struggled as well. So he actually got traded from Nashville to Montreal, but he did not play an NHL game for the Canadiens. I believe he went down to Laval for a little bit in the AHL. Then he got flipped to Arizona, where he picked up his game and played really well for them at the start of the 14-15 year. Then from there, he got traded to Minnesota, and then he went on an absolute tear for Minnesota. He was phenomenal with the Wild. He was like an all-star caliber goalie for Minnesota. Then from there, that was during like the prime years of his career where he was really establishing himself as a legitimate number one. Then from there, he moved on to San Jose. And San Jose, this was when they were falling off. They weren't a very good team anymore, so Dubnyk's numbers weren't as great. And then finally he finished off his career with Colorado. He barely really played for them. I think he only started like 4 or 5 games maybe for Colorado. But I just thought it was an interesting topic to discuss because he's had an up and down career. He played for quite a while, so yeah, good career for Devan Dubnyk. What are your thoughts on Dubnyk and the roller coaster ride he had?
Okay, so I looked up his DB, and I just got to read out how crazy the 2-year span of him. So he went down to the Hamilton Bulldogs, which was the minor league team for, was it Montreal at the time before they were the Laval Rockets?
Yeah.
Yes. So he went down to Hamilton. He played 8 games, right? In the AHL, he had an .893 save percentage and a .333 in the AHL, right? So then he gets flipped to Arizona that year, or the next year, and he plays 19 games. Decent stats, a .952 record with a .916 and a .272. Not terrible, not great, not terrible, right? But then that year when he gets flipped to Minnesota, so he's 9-5-2 in Arizona, or he gets flipped to Arizona. Sorry, he gets flipped to Minnesota. When he gets flipped to Minnesota from Arizona, he plays 39 games for Minnesota, has a record of 27-9-2, has a .936 and a 178 goals against. He had a 178 goals against in half a season. So he went from letting in 3.3 goals against per game in the minor leagues to letting in 1.78 in the NHL the next year. That is insane. Like, that is so crazy. Like, how drastic of a change that is when you're playing minor leaguers and you can't stop a beach ball, and then you go into the NHL and all of a sudden you're stopping everything that moves. Like, that is crazy. Like, Devan Dubnyk had such a weird career because, like you said, he played good in Edmonton, just didn't have the team in front of him. And then he just got flip-flopped all over and then stood out in Minnesota, and then just a wild, career. Big goalie, 6'6". But I don't know. I liked him. He was, I didn't really have anything against him. Obviously, I didn't follow him too much because he played for the Oilers. But no, I like Devan Dubnyk. I think he was a great goalie. Interesting career to say the least. Like you said, he played for 7 or 8 different teams. He played in the minors. He played in the NHL. He played all over. it's a cool career to look at, and definitely I'm glad I looked that up because that is crazy how drastic his numbers changed in 2 seasons. 2 seasons his numbers changed, but yeah, congrats to Devan Dubnyk.
Yeah, because this was a guy who was like literally almost out of the NHL with how he's playing, almost lost his job, and then out of nowhere he goes to Minnesota and he's like, all right, I'm gonna pop off now and be an absolute monster. And yeah, like he's had a very up and down career, but I think it was definitely an interesting career to look at just based on the ups and downs, and overall I think he had a pretty solid career, so congrats to Dubnyk on a good NHL career. Speaking of up and down careers, we got to talk about Ethan Bear. He was actually just traded from Carolina to Vancouver. I'm not exactly sure what the return was. I think it was like a 5th-round pick and one other player, I believe, was involved. But yeah, Ethan Bear has had a up and down last few seasons. He was playing really well for the Oilers when they were in the playoffs in 2021 when they got swept by Winnipeg. Under Dave Tippett, he played really good for those 2 years, the 2019-20 season and the 2020-2021 year. But the last couple seasons, ever since he got moved to Carolina, haven't been overly great for Ethan Bear. I believe he's been a healthy scratch on numerous occasions for Carolina. But he's finally traded to Vancouver, where he's going to get an opportunity to play in the lineup on a regular basis because Vancouver's defense is not that strong. He may get a top 4 role or bottom pairing role, but either way, he's traded to Vancouver. And Zuu, what are your thoughts on the trade?
This is probably the best case scenario for Ethan Bear, honestly. Like, this pretty much is going to revive his career. Like you said, he played pretty good in Edmonton. I thought he was really good in Edmonton when he was there, and I thought, he was going to be a staple for that team. I thought he was going to stay for a while, and it just turned out to be the odd man out, and they swapped him 1-for-1 for McLovin, Warren Foegele. But it sucked because, Carolina picks up Ethan Bear. Everyone knows, like, if you don't know how stacked Carolina's defense core is, man, it is crazy. And the worst part is that they brought in Tony DeAngelo, who's basically an Ethan Bear, but slightly better. So Tony DeAngelo got the roster spot over Ethan Bear. And so you got this young, like, 23, 24-year-old defenseman that's definitely NHL ready, and he's just getting scratched every single night because there's just no roster spot for him. So for him to get traded to Vancouver on a team that relies on Quinn Hughes and that's it. I mean, they have Ekman Larsson and Tyler Myers, but like they're not deep defensively. This is the best case scenario for Ethan Bear. You trade him to a team that doesn't have the D core at all, and it gives him an opportunity to bounce back, prove that he's an NHL caliber defenseman, and really revive his career. And the thing I like too about this trade as well is obviously Ethan Bear, he's First Nations, and I think he's Cree. And it's really cool that he goes to Vancouver, and Vancouver obviously is so heavy on their culture. They're very big into the culture. They tap into the community in Vancouver because obviously Vancouver, is such a huge cultural city. And I think that's really cool for Ethan Bear to go to, a place that definitely out of any NHL team appreciates his culture the most. And I think it's so cool that he gets an opportunity to play for a team that wants him, needs him, and gives him a chance to bounce back. So I think this is the literal best case scenario for Ethan Bear. I think it's a fantastic trade for the Canucks.
Yeah, I never really considered the cultural aspect of it. You're right, Vancouver is a very diverse city, so looking at it from that aspect, I think that's pretty cool that he's going to get to play for the Canucks. I never thought about that. So we got a couple more topics to talk about to finish off the podcast. We're going to start off with Chicago. Seth Jones, he's out 3 to 4 weeks with a thumb injury. That's definitely a big loss for the Chicago Blackhawks because I believe he is their number 1 defenseman. But I want to ask you this, because he's injured, they are missing their number 1 defenseman. Is now the time to start tanking for Bedard if you're the Chicago Blackhawks?
I've already said this before the season even started. I thought Chicago was going to be last place in the NHL, by far. I honestly thought Chicago was going to embrace the tank for Bedard. I thought they were going to beat out San Jose for last place in the NHL, and 100%. Like, this is the time now. Obviously, the NHL doesn't condone tanking for draft lottery, and that's why the draft lottery is in place, because even if you get worse in the NHL, you're still not guaranteed that pick, right? That's pretty obvious. But yeah, Chicago, they need to realize they're not a playoff team. If you have Peter Mrazek as your starting goalie, you are not a playoff team. if your entire offensive core consists of Patrick Kane, Jonathan Toews, and that's it, you're not a playoff team. Yeah, San Jose. Chicago is just, they're not there, not even close. They have no reason to exceed expectations, even though the expectations are the bare minimum. So I think this is now the best time for Chicago to start doing what they need to do and lose.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, when you're missing your number one defenseman, and like you said, your only offense, if like firepower is Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews, I think now is the time to start tanking, especially when I think both Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews are probably going to be gone this year. So for me, I think, just tank and get Connor Bedard and just start your rebuild and get a franchise player right out of the gate. And I think the best chance for them is just to tank now and go for Bedard.
Speaking of the draft class, I want to point this out as well. Even if they don't land on Bedard, this 23 draft class is deep, man. It is super deep. Obviously, you have Bedard going number 1. Matvei Michkov number 2. He's looking like the next Ovechkin. You got basically the next Crosby and Ovechkin going in this draft. But you also have a couple other guys in there, like Fantilli. He's coming up out of nowhere. Like, there is some really, really good prospects in this draft. And even if you don't land on number 1, you can't be too disappointed because you're coming out with a stud player in the top 5.
Yeah, exactly. Like, this draft is loaded. I think it's going to be beneficial for Chicago to tank because you could get Bedard, you could get Michkov, and the draft class, like you said, is very deep. So I think it's definitely best for Chicago now that you're missing your number one defenseman. Tank for Bedard because you're not making the playoffs. Like, there's no shot. We got one last topic to talk about, another injury. That is Sean Couturier. He's going to have another back surgery. Apparently he had one before. He's out 3 to 4 months for the Flyers. I mean, it hasn't really impacted their season, but it's definitely a big loss for them still because Couturier is a great player, and you hate to see him having to go through a second back surgery.
Yeah, that one's tough too. Sean Couturier is a fantastic two-way centerman. He can put points up. He can put pucks in the back of the net. If he played a full season, he would definitely be a Selke nominee, and you hate to see something like that happen. Back surgeries are no joke, obviously. That's very, very important. It's going to be interesting, really, just to see if he continues to play hockey. Like, obviously the advancements in the medical field nowadays are so crazy that I wouldn't put it past it for him to, 100% recover from his back surgery and come back and play. But there is always that worry there. Super serious. And, we just hope, you hate to see a very, very good player like Sean Couturier go out for such a long time. He's always been so injury prone. You just want to see the best for the player because, as a hockey fan, you just want to see good hockey, right? And it's just kind of upsetting that, a guy like this has to go through so much, and you just hope nothing but the best for Couturier.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Sean Couturier is a great player for that team, and like you said, he's a very good defensive center. If he did play a full season, he'd definitely be in the running for the Selke, but it's definitely a unfortunate loss for Philly, and we hope he has a good recovery and can get back as soon as possible. Zuu, my man, do you got any other topics you would like to discuss?
Man, we've talked about a lot. I honestly think we've covered, the most of it. It's been a very fun episode. I do have one thing to say, Bee Rhodes. The Red Deer Rebels of the WHL got off to a franchise record. What is it? 16 straight wins. We were just talking about this. Bee Rhodes was at my place this weekend, and they just lost tonight.
Ooh, who beat them?
They lost their undefeated streak to start the season. They lost to the team that has only lost one game this season, the Winnipeg Ice, who were 15-1 going into this game. So, two great teams. Of course, me being pretty local to the Red Deer Rebels, I like following them, and they have a very good attachment to my childhood. So it's cool to see that they're starting off so good, that they're going to be a playoff team this year. Gonna have to catch some Rebels games live, but yeah, they lost their, I think it was 16-game winning streak to start the season. So, but I think that's it for my end, and you don't got anything else you want to talk about either, B Rhodes?
I think that's it for me too, my man. I think that pretty much
B
covers
Rhodes.
it.
So, since you started off this episode with the intro, you want to take the outro? You want to take a stab at the outro, buddy?
I'm gonna give it a shot.
Let's do it. Let's hear it.
All right. Well, we definitely thank you all for tuning in to this week's episode of the Cherry Pickers podcast. Again, featuring your co-hosts, Bee Rhodes and Zuu. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, I believe, as well. Am I missing anything, or is that pretty much what we are available on?
Follow the podcast on Twitter for all your updates on the episodes at TCP_show, and give B Rhodes a follow on Twitter for that excellent effort on the intro and outro. At BrodyMac97. You can follow me there too at your boy Zuu. ZUU is Zuu. I think that's it, B Rhodes.
Yeah, show B Rhodes some love. He definitely made a big step in today's episode, taking on a lot of the fire. So we are definitely glad you guys tuned in, and take care and stay tuned for some more Cherry Pickers podcasts on the way. Oh, yeah, that was a good episode.